So thanks for coming along today. Nice to see all these familiar faces. So a bit of background about myself. I've always been creating things, and one of my earliest memories is actually being in primary school and having a drawing of mine, which is actually a jungle scene of animals, selected to be made into a wall mural in the school playground. I was very proud of that idea, so I have been creating for a long time. And then when I got to high school, I had to choose between economics and art. And I chose economics. As did you. So it was a smaller school, and they were on the same time. So I started my career wearing in corporate marketing, and some of you remember wearing shoulder pads and high heels, power dressing. So that's how I started out my career. And some of you must have been wearing the same things, I'm sure. And so during this time, I continued to make things, and I was sewing and baking and doing art classes. I made cookies for my friends at work. Some of them might remember that. It's always creating something, even with food. And so then I ventured into watercolours and acrylics, and then into mosaics. And my husband once said that if he stood still, I would mosaic him. Anyway, so this rhino, life-size rhino, he laid still while we mosaicked him, along with my artist friends. One of them is Katie and Regular, my other business partner. There's a picture of us. There were 4 of us who did this life-size rhino. And then, of course, I have to share with you that he was at the Opera House. And so it was an interesting project for us, actually. So it was part of a Taronga Zoo project to raise awareness about the plight of the white rhinos. And we were selected to make art on a life-size rhino. It took us a long time, actually, because it was tile by tile, but we loved the experience. And then the rhinos were auctioned off to raise funds as well, and our rhino was the equal highest bid on the night for raising funds for the white rhinos.
24,000.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a private collection. So when my youngest son started high school, I mentioned to a friend, and now my business partner, Regular, that it was my chance to take my art seriously. So, the idea of you only live once. So off to uni we went. And I was taught about my major. I enjoyed learning the new things, and every element of creating kind of spoke to me. There was printmaking and sculpture and painting and textiles, but maybe not performance. That wasn't really my thing. I'm going, oh, and here I am performing. Slightly different, I suppose. So I majored in painting and textiles at UNSW Art and Design, which was formerly known as COFA. And I loved the study and all the things that I learned along the way. I met lots of young people, lots of young artists who actually we've had exhibiting here at the gallery as well, which has been lovely. I even enjoyed the essay writing. I know that's a bit sad, but I actually enjoyed doing all the research and putting all of my thoughts together. And so I discovered lots of different things. And so my art practice today is across different mediums. And I call myself an expanded painter. So I paint with acrylics, with fabric and with thread, or a mix of these things. And my work can be an installation, a sculpture, or it can be two-dimensional. And sometimes one work can move into multiple mediums. So I made an installation sculpture with the an installation sculpture of a straitjacket. And I also photographed someone wearing that straitjacket, and then made a video using a blue screen technology. Or with the help of my very creative, talented young sons. But that meant there were multiple works out of this one piece. I'm drawn to everyday objects and textiles and everyday things, and I like using clothing as well. It kind of has embedded either myself or other people in it, their lives and their journeys. I think it actually adds a different level to the work. And so this work here, my mother told me I was lucky to have the choice to work. It's actually got a wedding veil in it that's on the front, and it's also got donated tea towels, and so that referencing the kitchen and domestic work. And my mother actually did tell me this. She didn't have the opportunities, and she actually said to me one day that I was lucky to have the choice. But it also meant there were other challenges, and I thought that tea towels was also a reflection. And then, that idea of in the past where women got married and couldn't work, hence the wedding vow. And then, sorry, that's just me being excited now with my work. Now this work is referencing mosaicing basically, and it's actually an oil painting on paper that I tore up and re-put back together again. And it's actually called A Mother's Torment, and that's a close-up of it. But they're basically, so the idea of bringing mosaics into painting and then creating a two-dimensional work with that. This work is a straitjacket, and was referencing the everyday. And the straitjacket itself is made out of reclaimed fabric. So there's bed sheets and towels, a dress, pair of jeans, and it brings all those fabrics together. And it's not only about wearing a straitjacket for mental health reasons, which have been used in the past. It's also about the everyday and being constrained and comforted by the everyday. And so they're everyday fabrics that I had used in that jacket. And if you didn't look at it closely enough, you wouldn't necessarily notice it was a straitjacket. So it was also referencing society and and fitting in as well. And so again, I took that straitjacket and then photographed. Well, actually, I didn't take the photographs obviously because I was wearing a straitjacket. So I think I had my young son Harrison helping me to do that, although he's not that young anymore. Taking photographs of me in the everyday wearing that jacket as well. And then, I'm in the kitchen and in the laundry. And so then a little bit about, so I also wanted to tell you that I've also used newspaper and medicine boxes, and I like to hand stitch. I find the concept of hand stitching quite intriguing, although I don't like sewing on buttons or repairing things. So, sew my button? No. But the idea of hand stitching on paper is quite lovely too, and it's quite therapeutic, and the whole process of making art I find quite cathartic and relaxing. And it's kind of strange, although I suppose I did a lot of sewing in the past, but it was machine stitching, making garments. But then my practice at the moment involves a lot of hand stitch. But I don't just hand stitch in fabric, I do it on canvases and on paper as well. And so a little bit about the motifs in my show. So basically through my practice along my journey, I've got these repeated elements, and I just wanted to explain some of them for you. And so this one is the box template that you'll see around my show and also in my art practice as well. And it actually is referencing medicine, so it's actually a prescription medicine box. And this was part of my journey through life, so my art is about my lived experience as a carer of people who needed medication. And so the motive, so this box template motive also references the box of society and that idea of having to fit in, which people read about and hear about as well. But so to me, it's more than just medicine. It is also about fitting in, and do we need to fit in? Do we defy? And then I should say though that medication does play a role in society, but I am hearing through my own experiences of lots of people who are needing medication, and I'm kind of going, well, if everybody needs medicating, what does that say about society? What are we getting wrong that so many people need medication? So that's part of my commentary about using that motif as well, is going, hang on a second. So yes, I'm not saying that we don't need medication, but if we need so much, then what is it saying about our society, and what flags is it raising for us? And so the other motif is I am enough. And so I came across these words in many ways along my journey, and they're a strong part of the practice of Marissa Peer. So she's an English therapist and speaker and writer. And the words are powerful and refer to the self. You need to love yourself. You need to know that you're important and that you matter. And this was something that I had forgotten along my journey, and I found that it applies to others as well. So I love sharing this message, that I am enough. It's an affirmation that says so much. and hence, again, I've used thread, but I've used it in a different way, using in the work behind me here. And this work here was at the Ravenswood Women's Art Prize last year, and this is actually a soft sculpture with donated denim and hand stitch, and that was one of my works, and that also actually was a very similar size to the work that is behind me at the moment. That one. And then I have this work here, which is called My Inner Child, Audrey. Some people may have seen this work before. And this is referencing the fact that, when I was born, or when we're all born, we know that we're enough. But along the journey of life, we forget that we're enough. And basically, my inner child still knows that I'm enough, but sometimes I forget. And so this is to remind me that I am enough. And the hand stitching of I am enough is actually a reminder to myself as well, because you've got to stitch every letter by letter by letter, and then you have to write it again and again and again. So it's kind of like school lines, isn't it? Really? Writing and writing and writing. So another motif I have, of course, is the canary. And so the canary was something that kept popping up for me, the miner's canary, the inner canary, your intuition and your gut feel, and the sense that something is not right and needs attention. You need to listen to your heart, follow your heart. And so the canary is to me both a warning and a signal that things need adjustment, but also a reminder to trust myself and to listen to myself, which is something that, other people have also maybe not be listening to their inner canaries. And it's an affirmation for me to listen to my inner canary and a comment on society. So, the miners' canaries were used up until, I think even in the 70s and 80s, basically in mines, and when the toxic fumes within the mines were too high, the canaries sort of stopped stinging and or may have died, so the miners knew to get out. And so for me, the canary is about society going, hey, what's going on? There's all this medication, there's all these issues going on. And yet we also need to listen to our inner canaries. So who and what inspires me that I thought might be of interest? And I've mentioned one person along the way, but I'm inspired by the things I see and hear and feel, and like I said before, my lived experience. I find the process of making art enjoyable and cathartic. I feel very present when I'm making art, and it becomes quite meditative, like I said, and all-absorbing when I'm hand stitching. And it allows me to process the world and to make comment on the world, and also to escape from the world as well, and from the things that I'm seeing and hearing. And so along my journey, I discovered that I was a sensitive person. And I'm practicing to accept that it's okay to be a sensitive person, and my art helps me to actually work through that sensitivity as well. And so I had a solo show last year, and it's me being a little bit excited about my first solo show. And there seems to be construction stuff around, but Gallery Lane Co was actually renovating at the time, so there's a bit of construction, but that's where they hang my sign, but I had to get a picture for my sign. And so in this exhibition, I had soft sculptures, a video, photography, works on paper, and installations. And all of these works were working through the idea or the concept of being overwhelmed in the everyday. And it related to a time in my life when I was overwhelmed and was trying to make sense of it all and to share this experience with others and to destigmatise and create conversations about mental health and about being overwhelmed in the everyday. And so I was recalibrating not only myself but also society. And I think there was another installation picture. Yeah. And so as part of that show, I had a artist panel where I had some guest speakers with me, and we discussed and debated the role of art in mental health. So that was quite good. And there was a video, but I think that the video is not going to work. So this is a work. This is actually one of my sons wearing one of the straight jackets that I had made out of black and white fabric, but I just wanted to put it into the everyday. And so this is actually a photograph in Lane Cove where he's wearing the straight jacket. It's quite interesting, the reactions and the lack of reactions to people seeing somebody wearing a coat, because the coat blended in, it was black and white, but his arms were tied up and he's wandering around. Hi, come on in. Hi. So he's wandering around wearing this straight jacket because we moved around in different places. But yeah, and people just wandered past, and this is part of my show, and I had them enlarged and mounted on foam core. And so after this exhibition, it led me onto a journey of self-discovery and to delve into the self. I discovered the book, The Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhiani. And I really was excited about upgrading the software in my head and about achieving amazing things. And so I've always been a thinker and a seeker. And so these books that I'm reading were helping me, and then I was able to put this into my art practice. And through Vishen Lakhiani, I haven't met her actually. I moved on to Marissa Peer. And she's an English speaker and therapist, author and hypnotherapist. And I watched one of her talks on YouTube and was hooked on the concept of there being a lot of self-doubt in the world and about my own self-doubt. And I went on a personal journey and found myself exploring it in my art practice, as you can see. And you know, when you're thinking about something, then all you can see is that. Like, you're thinking about a red car, then all you see is red cars. And so I was seeing this all over. Whenever I was looking, there was self-doubt everywhere, and I was working through my own issues. But then I was seeing it in the media, on the television, and people were telling me these, their stories as well, and it was in the bookshops. And so, I mean, there seems to be a lot of people struggling with anxiety and depression and low self-worth. And, I was just picking it up everywhere. And so there's also the Australian author Sarah Wilson, who wrote a book, this book here called First Who Make the Beast Beautiful, and she was on MasterChef as well. And so these books have all fed into my art practice, and I thought I'd just bring them along today. And she delves into anxiety and self-worth herself, and she has issues that she had been living with. And so I continued my research, and I'm making art at the same time, and I went on to Brené Brown. And Brené Brown is an American, so I've gone all over the world kind of thing. This is telling me that it's in England, it's in America, it's in Australia. So, I'm going, there's something going on. And so Brené is a researcher, a storyteller is what she calls herself, and she's American. And during her research and writing things, and she had a breakdown or she calls it a spiritual awakening. And she talks about shame holding us back and about owning our stories and sharing the story with people you can trust, and that fear is holding us back. And so then, because I'm always thinking and seeking more things, and then I moved on to somebody else. And so then I found Johann Hari, who is an English writer and author as well, and he wrote this book called The Lost Connections, and I went and saw him after I'd read the book, but he came to the Sydney Writers' Festival as well last year, so that must have been around the May time frame or something, and I went and heard him talk. And his book actually explores anxiety and depression around the world, and he went and looked at different societies and said, trying to work out why they don't have anxiety or depression or why these people do, and basically discovered that we had lost connections. We'd lost connections with ourselves, we'd lost our connections with meaningful work, we'd lost connections with our families, we lost connections with the community, and these are all things that communities that weren't experiencing anxiety and depression and low self-worth had. They had a strong sense of community, a strong sense of family. They were doing meaningful work. And so, hence you can see all those canaries around going like, hey, what is it for you? What is your inner canary telling you should be doing? And so this exhibition is, all those things is this exhibition, Songs of Myself, with my motifs. There's newspaper and there's textiles, there's hand stitch, because like I say, I was excited about all kinds of making. And so for me, my art raises awareness about the health of the world and my world, and helps me to process the world and also to digest my world as well. And so there's another artwork here. of course it's not centred, but that's okay. So this is actually a metre by metre, and some people may have already seen this work. And basically, this one's called Wedded to Self, and it's my commitment to love and accept myself, and it uses fabric from the making of my wedding dress and also fabric from the everyday, and it's got denim and also there's a dressing gown, and I've purposely highlighted the me factor, and it's a ring of commitment, and you make a commitment to marry somebody, but you also need to make a commitment to yourself, and so I decided that was a great way to be able to explain that in my art practice. And so I think that we need to remind ourselves that we are enough, and by sharing the story through my art, I'm hoping to continue my own healing and also to help others along their journeys as well. And I think that is all from me. And so if anybody had any questions or...
What was it like cutting up your own wedding dress?
Well, it was from the making of my wedding dress. So I had my dress made, so it was a bit weird, but I had to wash the fabric and stuff. So yeah, it was an interesting process. But what do I need with a wedding dress after 25 years, really? Basically. And I've got 2 sons.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. That's the truth. I've got 2 sons as well. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, it was a bit weird.
I've got a question for you. Obviously, you can sew, Tracy. Where did you learn to do this?
Yeah, I think actually, I think my mother sewed me a little bit, but I think basically, I'm a lot self-taught, really. Yeah, I think we did it in high school, we did a bit of sewing, but I enjoyed that. And when I first came into Sydney, because I grew up in the country, one of the first things I bought with my first full-time pay packet was a sewing machine, which I still have today. And I've been in Sydney for a long time, but they don't make those machines like that anymore, so yeah. So yeah, I think I did do an online course as well, just to do a bit of pattern drafting and stuff, but basically, yeah, just practice, really.
That was really fascinating. It's really added an extra dimension to looking at your work, so thank you. And when you talk about listening to your inner canary, what are the messages that you think we maybe overlook or should be more alert for?
I think along the way you try to fit into the box and you think, okay, my kid has to do this, I have to do this. And we actually forget to listen to our intuition. it even comes into, I heard on the radio just recently that somebody went to the hospital because their child, who sadly actually passed away, was really sick. But the mother's saying something, but the doctors are saying something else. And in that incident, the girl actually passed away. She'd swallowed a battery or something. So I think sometimes mothers forget to trust their instincts as well about their children, and you can be told, hey, there's something else, oh no, there's something wrong with the child. But then, you could be doing a job that you don't like and you think that's all you can do, so you stay. So also I think it even relates to food, actually. We make our children eat their food, but then sometimes they know that actually food doesn't agree with them. But, you must eat this food, and we're torn as parents going, do they have to eat this? Because, I was made to eat it when I was growing up. And I say that from personal experience because I made my son take sandwiches to school. And he didn't really like sandwiches. And he didn't like pizza Friday nights either. Turns out, actually, he's gluten sensitive. And so it ranges across a whole lot of things that I wasn't listening to what his body was telling us that actually he didn't like gluten. So it's those whole kind of things. So basically, even through meditation, you might be able to listen to yourself. But, I think we need to take care of ourselves. If you're injured, if you're sick, but it could be to do with your job, it could be to do with your relationships, it could be to do with a friendship, and it could be to do with not following your own path. So all of those things. Yes, Gemma?
I have 2 questions. And sorry, you might have covered it because I missed an earlier part of the job. In terms of intuition and all that kind of stuff, with all the books that you've read, like where does self-compassion come up a lot in those
Yes.
forms?
Yeah, so the idea of I am enough and reminding myself that I am enough, and the work, I'm not sure whether you saw actually the one that was called My Inner Child Audrey, was to remind myself that I was born enough, that I'm always enough, and that I always will be enough. But along the journey of life, I'd forgotten that I was enough. And so, so self-compassion is part of knowing that I'm enough and that what I can achieve today is enough. And so, and definitely along the way, I've had to learn how to self-care. One of the things I actually was really good for my personal journey was to go off to India last year. Was it last year? No, it was the year before now. Gosh, time goes fast. Anyway, so that was just an amazing trip to go by myself to India, and I did yoga and meditation for 2 weeks, which was actually very good. And I came back and fed that into my art practice, of course. Yeah. Any other questions?
Another I have two. So, do you you studied at COFA,
yep.
right? Did you think, without that, do you think you would have had the confidence to express yourself like in this way and have your own show?
That's a really good question. Because, I had been practicing art for a long time. I've been doing all these classes, but I actually just felt that I needed the confidence of going to uni and to expand my horizons. And I went to uni thinking I was going to do sculpture and mosaics, basically. And I went in there and went, oh, actually, they're not really into mosaics either, because I did go to a contemporary school, and thought, but I really like this and I really like that. And so, yes, going back to uni, that was also confidence building itself, because, I hadn't studied for a long time, and, approaching assignments and, hanging out with all these young people who, were just out of school, and some of them in their 20s. There was a mix of ages. So, it did help build my personal confidence to go right, and also to help me to build my practice and understand what it is I wanted to actually make, basically, That's a good question.
Can you tell us about this?
Yes, so this one is called Self, I Said Self, and actually my dad used to say that all the time. I don't know when everybody else's dad says that, but Self, I Said Self, because he talks to himself. And so it's actually named after my... Self, I Said Self.
Self, I said self, okay.
My dad always said that. I'm like, that's a really, And so I actually say it, and now Harrison says it as well. Self, I Said Self, just talking to myself. Because I do the habit of talking to myself. And so this work was about finding comfort. So it's a quilt, and it's basically made from reclaimed fabric. But basically, I've hand-stitched into the words again, I am enough. And when you wrap yourself inside the quilt, you get comforted and feel enough. Like, if you're nervous or scared, then a blanket or a jacket can just help you cocoon. And so that's kind of like a cocoon idea, but again embedded with fabrics from the everyday. So there's cushion covers, and there's donated denim, and there's bed sheets, and there's a dressing gown, and there's a t-shirt, and a whole range of fabrics in there, and also the words I am enough.
Do you think you can ever stop ever saying that to yourself, like all of us?
No, exactly.
There will come a time where you just feel you never have to say it to yourself.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. But maybe not, I don't know. Yeah.
Self-affirmation is always to look in the mirror and say, I love myself.
Yes.
That's really hard to do.
It is,
but
yes.
That's something that we do, like we should do forever.
I know, it is.
I love myself.
And actually part of the practice of
I don't need
Marissa...
someone else to love me.
No, and in order to love other people, I need to love myself first.
Yeah.
And that's why the I am enough, and actually what I was going to install, but I couldn't actually, was actually a mirror, so that you could all stand in front of the mirror, and I was going to write in it in lipstick, I am enough, basically, and then you would stand in it and look. So you still might see that in my next show, but I didn't get, the mirror bit didn't come off, but that was one of my ideas. But yes, we do need to say that to ourselves. We don't have to have other people telling us that they love us. That is part of life, but it also, we need to love ourselves. So so I'm enough. I think we can keep saying it forever.
I think this is really important, and it's all our age needing to learn this message. I don't think my mum ever needed to know that message, but I'm thinking the younger people, even more so, with social media telling them they're not enough. Yeah. It's a shame you can't get this whole idea sent out to the next generation.
Yeah.
Because I think they're going to need it a lot more than even we do.
Yeah, I think so. And that idea of trying to fit in and be like everybody else.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a strong message that does need to filter down into other generations. Yeah. That's true. Okay, well then, that's the end. Thank you very much.